It's the summer reading program is beginning. I hope you've already all signed up. And this is also Gay Pride Month, so we're delighted everybody is here. I'm going to call the roll. Commissioner Cahill.
Here.
Mr. Alford.
Here.
Commissioner Engor.
Here.
Mr. Goldberg. Here. Green. Here. Mr. Hauser.
Here.
Commissioner Evanridge.
I'm here.
Mr. Lagos. Commissioner McKenzie. Here. Commissioner McMillan.
Here.
Excellent. All right, there are a couple of changes on the agenda. One of them is we had a wonderful all labs meeting earlier this month. And so Eric and I thought that probably the labs would be coming to talk to us. And so rather than have just the generic labs friends item on the agenda, we thought that we would wait and put, you know, the Santa Rosa lab is coming, the Roanoke Park lab is coming, the Sebastopol lab is coming. So that will be on the agenda when they're coming. And so we're going to have a lab presentation next month. So that's why there is no Lab Friends Foundation section in the agenda tonight. And the third thing is, if you look at your agendas, we're going to, after the presentations, we're going to take the new front property action items, which are 9.6 and 9.7, and we're going to move them up after section 5 of presentations, just so that we can let the insurance folks go home at a relatively early time. So again, that's 9.6, 9.7. And we're going to move those up to right after the presentations, which is section 5. Questions? Okay. Now it's time for public appearances. Members of the public who wish to address the commission regarding matters not on the agenda should request recognition at this time pursuant to the above described protocols. See the guidelines for public appearances in the general information section below. Do we have public? And you've got about 3 minutes. Pardon? Oh, great. So we have a full commission this evening, just so that everybody knows.
Good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Good. My name is Dina Bliss, and I'm with the Sebastopol Library LAB. We're aware of complaints from several patrons about the lack of cleanliness in our main library room. Many of these complaints have arisen early in the day, suggesting that the janitorial crew is not doing an adequate job of cleaning. I understand that this has been an ongoing issue at other branches as well. Branches have made the administration aware of the deficits of the current janitorial contractor, but to date, nothing has been done to remedy the situation. We'd like to suggest that 1, you not pay the current invoice since the work is inadequate. And 2, that you consider not renewing the contract with this out-of-county agency, but instead ask for proposals from Sonoma County Janitorial Services. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Keith Ethery. I'm the Vice Chair of the Sebastopol Lab. According to the Joint Powers Agreement that the Commission operates under, quote, the purpose of the lab shall be to provide information and make recommendations to the Commission and the Library Director on matters affecting library service based on input from their respective service areas, unquote. The Sebastopol Library Advisory Board has found it next to impossible to provide information and make recommendations to the Commission when the Commission considers and votes on agenda items within the time span of one Commission meeting. Such time frame does not allow the various labs in Sonoma County to meet to discuss the agenda items and, if relevant, to provide information and make recommendations. In most cases, having an item listed on the agenda is an adequate notification. The only time that would be inadequate is if the exact language to be voted on is detailed in the agenda, not to be altered before the vote, and the pros and cons provided in the agenda along with the item. The following procedural change is suggested as a starting point. The Commission might want to enhance this procedure to cover emergencies with the definition of what is an emergency. So we request that the Commission change its procedural rules such that each agenda item that requires a vote have a first reading with discussion during the first meeting be followed by a second reading and potential vote during the following commission meeting. Such an arrangement would give labs time to meet and, if desired, formulate a response to provide information and make recommendations, which is the lab charter under the Joint Powers Agreement. This is similar to what many city councils do. For example, the Sebastopol City Council follows this first reading, discussion, next meeting, second reading, and then vote and policy. This is pretty standard for legislative bodies, and we'd like the commission to adopt this policy so that the commission can be said to be operating according to the Joint Powers Agreement. Thank you.
Other public comment? Yeah.
Hi, Commission, Helena Whistler from Sebastopol Library Advisory Board. And I come to you this evening, thanking you very much first for providing us with an all-lab meeting, which I think was very well attended and very well received. At that meeting, it was apparent overwhelmingly that the lab members wanted to improve their ability to do their job, as pointed out in the Joint Powers Agreement, which is to provide advice on matters of importance to the library, to the library advisor, to the commission, and to the administration. So we were surprised when, because that meeting was on April 27th, and on May 29th, we were surprised at our library advisory meeting when we had expressed interest in presenting at tonight's meeting, to be told by the assistant director and the public service manager that it had been that item had been removed from the agenda. So that was, in fact, that night, I think they'd gotten the information about that. So it's very short notice. And it's surprising too, that there was no discussion with the library advisory boards as to whether that is an appropriate way for them to now provide their input to the commission. And my understanding is that the commissioners have not had an opportunity to weigh in on that change to the agenda either. So that has been a long-standing agenda item. And indeed, if labs had wanted to make longer presentations, they also had that opportunity on the agendas. So by removing that option to come to the meeting, then we lose the ability to comment on things of recent import. Instead, we are told that we have to at least schedule a presentation 2 weeks ahead of time. And then we can only make a presentation if the director and the chair are able to fit us into an agenda. So in a way, I mean, perhaps you can see our point of view that it seemed contrary to improving communication with the library advisory boards. Instead, it kind of prevented more communication. I would like to request from the commission that a committee be formed with perhaps 4 commissioners and 4 lab members from throughout the county to develop an improved vision of lab and commission communication. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comment? Great. Okay, our first action item by resolution is for Gay Pride Month, and you're going to have a couple of people. Do I have a motion to approve the resolution? Motion to approve.
I second.
All in favor, Mr. Cahill?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Yes.
Wilbur? Yes. Green? Yes. Mr. Hauser?
Yes.
Mr. Hudson?
Yes.
Mr. Lago?
Yes.
Mr. Pensy? Yes. Mr. Gillen?
Yes.
Unanimous, and we would like our 2 commissioners read the resolutions.
Thank you very much, Chair Doyle. I asked for the honor of reading the resolution, and I'd like to read it in honor of my son and his husband and their 2 children who live outside of Columbus, Ohio, and are big library supporters of the Bexley Public Library and the Columbus Public Library. Resolution Pride Month 2024. Whereas June is designated as International Pride Month, which serves as a time to promote the self-affirmation, dignity, equality, and increased visibility of the LGBTQIA+ community. And
I'd like to also read this in honor of my daughter Amalia and her wife, who live on the Oregon coast. Whereas while strides have been made toward equity, inclusion, and belonging, the work to promote queer rights is ongoing, and the past several years have posed significant challenges for our queer community members. And
whereas LGBTQIA+ people throughout the world have faced widespread anti-trans and anti-queer legislation, as well as book bans, and the condemnation and erasure of queer lives and experiences, with a devastating cost to the mental health, physical health, and well-being of the queer community. And
whereas California libraries are leaders in advancing civil rights for all people, including the rights of LGBTQIA+ residents, and to help ensure that queer joys and struggles are never erased, Sonoma County Library is committed to opportunities for queer people to add to the shared history of our county and to connect with each other. And
whereas the library actively works to make sure that collections, programs, and services reflect, represent, and uplift the lives and experiences of queer people. And
whereas libraries are places where the queer community will always be welcomed and celebrated, not just during Pride Month, but every day.
therefore, be it resolved that the Sonoma County Library Commission celebrates June 2024 as Pride Month.
Any public comment? Okay, thanks very much. Thanks to both of you, and thanks, everybody. With that, we are going to move into the presentation section, and the first presentation is about the Guerneville Regional Library Young Writers Contest.
Hear me okay?
Yes.
Yeah.
All right. Good evening, Director Cabot, Chair Doyle, and Commissioners. Thank you for having me. I'm Stuart Wilkinson, a Teen Services Librarian representing the Guerneville, Forestville, and Occidental libraries. In 2016, I started working as a page at the Guerneville Regional Library. In 2019, I returned to the library as the branch's second ever Teen Services Librarian. This is now the second time I've been involved in running the Young Writers Contest, and I'm grateful for the opportunity to represent the River Friends in the libraries and the branch. I have a Bachelor of Fine Arts in Writing from the Savannah College of Art and Design, and I'm thankful to have actually used that experience to help uplift the next generation of talented writers. Doris Dickinson was born in 1927 and passed away in 2017 at the age of 90. She was a respected member of the Guerneville community who dedicated her life to teaching, raising her 4 children, and volunteering for various local causes. She was involved with the Guerneville Library, the Russian River Senior Center, and Armstrong Redwood State Natural Reserve. Among other projects and recognition, she co-authored several biographies and DVDs about the Armstrong family, which were publicly distributed. The contest wasn't initially named in Doris's honor, as she passed away 11 years after the first contest was held. It later took on Doris's namesake in honor of her years of work as the chair of the committee and her legacy as a writer and educator. I also want to give a quick shout out to Bruce Robinson, a former River Friend of the library and former chair of the Young Writers Contest. He helped steward this program after Dickinson passed away. He graciously met with me recently to go over the history of the program and give me years of ephemera from past events. This contest would not have been possible without his years of hard work and dedication. Originally started in 2006 as the Young Writers Competition, it was actually inspired by a 2003 Young Writers Literary Contest held by the Sonoma Valley Friends of the Library. This contest was geared slightly towards older students, grades 9 through 11, and included creative nonfiction writing, fictional short stories, and poetry. The first ever theme in 2006 was what I like best about living in the Russian River area. As the years went on, the themes became more and more provocative. One of my favorites is from 2012, and one I'd like to revisit, which is if you were elected West Sonoma County Supervisor, what would your top 3 priorities be for the Russian River area and why? Supervisor Linda Hopkins is someone the Guerneville staff considers a real champion of our branch and our efforts. And I think she'd get a real kick out of that essay prompt. When we revitalized the contest post-pandemic in 2021, we focused on the theme of Russian River area stewardship and what it meant to the young people in our area. I think about Dickinson's legacy, particularly her work with Armstrong Redwood State Reserve down the road from the library. This year, I chose the prompt, what does the freedom to read mean to you, for the contest shortly before learning that the New York Public Library was also running an essay contest for teens, similarly themed, focused on the freedom to read. While I initially considered changing the prompt to avoid duplication, I decided to stick with it. I took the replicated prompt as a sign of the topic's importance. According to the American Library Association, and their Office of Intellectual Freedom, there have been over 1,247 documented demands to censor library books and resources in 2023. The number of titles targeted for censorship surged 65% in 2023 compared to 2022, reaching the highest levels documented by the Office of Intellectual Freedom in more than 20 years of tracking. 4,240 unique book titles were targeted for removal from schools and libraries. This tops the previous high from 2022, when 2,571 unique titles were targeted for censorship. Titles representing the voices and lived experiences of LGBTQIA+ and BIPOC individuals make up 47% of those targeted in censorship attempts. Young Writers Contest has historically run through the first half of the school year, with the award ceremony happening before winter break. This year, I opted to push it to the spring and celebrate the award with an award ceremony before the students adjourn for summer break. I was responsible for outreach and advertising to the schools for the contest, ensuring the documentation was online and physically displayed in and around the branch. I've had much help from my colleagues, including Allison Randall, our children's librarian, Mel McCallum, my branch manager, passionate local teachers, and of course, the River Friends, whose fundraising and hard work has made this essay contest possible. Our 6 contest judges are volunteers from the River Friends of the Library, me, and yes, our library director, Erica Thibault, who took a particular interest in the contest. The winners are notified that they've been selected, but how they've ranked and how much they've won is only revealed at the award ceremony. First, second, and third place winners were chosen for each grade level, 6th, 7th, and 8th grades, and an honorable mention possible for each grade. Our gracious River Friends donated prize money for the winning essays. First place winners received $100, second place $75, third $50, and honorable mentions, of which there was one this year, got $25. Essayists were encouraged but not required to attend the award ceremony to celebrate with friends, family, library staff, and volunteers. This year's award ceremony had 48 attendees, including the winning students and local teachers Kelly Bowers and Vivian Diaz, River Friends Treasurer Damian Olson, Library Director and Judge Erica Thibault, and myself. The award ceremony attendees had a lot of fun, and most of the winners in attendance with their friends and family. One of my favorite moments from the contest this year was actually when one of the absent winners was announced, and watching all of the other young people in the room light up and cheer because they knew this person and were so happy to learn that they had won, even though they couldn't be there to share the joy. This year, 23 students from 3 schools participated: Verneville, Monterey, and Montgomery Elementary in Cazadero. This was made possible by close collaboration with the local teachers I previously mentioned, Kelly Bowers, an 8th grade English teacher at Verneville School, and Vivian Diaz, the 5th through 8th grade English and Humanities teacher at Monterey School. The prompt again this year was, what does the freedom to read mean to you? And this year, I quickly read the winners. They deserve the credit. 6th grade went to Esteban Berrigan with 1st place. Emma Brown was 2nd. Annalie Ward with 3rd. 7th grade, Faye Moriarty as 1st. Bailey Landeros 2nd. Sierra Simonik 3rd. And then in 8th grade, Heather Riedlinger, who you'll hear from in a moment. Well, I'll read her essay portion. Kira Valencia, Maisie Awful, and our one and only honorable mention this year, Mael Marino. This program fulfills several objectives in the Reimagining Plan's goals to empower youth development and lifelong learning by supporting system-wide outreach and increased teen services, supporting career, college, and trade readiness, and emphasizing programs that provide opportunities to interact, engage, and contribute. It brings me great joy to see young people discovering their voices in a political climate where many claim to think of the children, but refuse to listen to them. Reading these young people's essays gives me hope, especially considering the attacks on reading freedom. I am the son of a librarian and fondly remember my mother judging a middle school essay contest in my home village of Norwich, Ontario, Canada. I vividly remember her sitting in the school gymnasium during the award ceremony and realizing how valued she was in the community. As I wrap up this presentation, I'd like to leave you with the words of our 8th grade 1st place winner, Heather Riedlinger, from her essay, What the Freedom to Read Means to Me. In conclusion, banning books is not a good idea, and we should not censor things. By banning books, we limit people's access to information and ideas, violate freedom of expression, and can have unintended consequences. Instead of banning books, we should encourage open and honest discussions about controversial topics. We should also promote diversity in literature and encourage all people to read widely. After all, knowledge is power, and the more we know, the better equipped we are to make informed decisions about our lives and our society. So I dare you to read a banned book. I couldn't have said it better myself. Good job, Heather. Thank you again all for your time. And if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them now.
Thanks very much for your presentation. We really appreciate it. And we were delighted to read the winning entries. They were really passionate, and we are incredibly proud that you inspired that kind of thing. Are there questions from the commission? Question, comment? Commissioner Rainbow.
Thank you very much. And it was nice that you included, it was really thoughtful to include the essays. They're all really outstanding, I felt, for what the topic was that they were addressing. The timeliness issue that you mentioned at the start of your speech about the New York Public Library is also timely with your presentation. Is that in this month's American Libraries, which is a journal that goes out to libraries, one of the featured topics is establishing book sanctuaries.
Yes, all right.
And I'm thinking that maybe between you and your colleagues at Guerneville, and maybe even ideally involving the students and of course the commission, that we could look into that concept of, having the Sonoma County Library identified as a book sanctuary. And of course, with Eric's.
Not have any objection from me.
Commissioner McKenzie.
Yeah, thank you, Stuart. Excellent presentation. Our Friends of the Library has a $1,000 and $2,000 scholarships that they have been giving out. The connection hasn't been as close to the library, and I think it's really a shame because, the way that you're able to spread the word and get the connection out there and involve the library. So I think our local Friends of the Library would like to get in touch with you about how you're able to do that. the friends contact the schools decide who's gonna get them, and then they get the award, and it's, doesn't have all this great community connection that you've developed. Is this a lot, kind of a growing thing, or have you stayed on strong for years and years and it's growing, or?
It has been the original and moved on from after the pandemic, and so I very much feel like and luckily, there is, as any good library would have, lots of documentation in past years, and actually going through that information, I realized that inspired by another library. And so what you're saying to me resonates a lot, because I think that close collaboration between the Friends group and the work that they're doing overlaps, and I'd love to see those efforts concentrated and together.
I'd like to see this, replicated throughout our library system. It's just a great thing. Thank you so much for being the champion.
Other questions, comment from the commission? Do give our regards. He was such a strong voice in Guerneville.
He's a great guy.
He is a fabulous guy.
Yeah.
Fabulous guy. Thank you. Public. Any public comments about the presentation? All right, then we'll move on to the community survey results. And we're going to invite an old friend of the library to come up to the podium and talk to us about the survey results.
We're trying to get Brian Godby to accept the promotion of panelists. So if you can accept the request, you're on it. Thank you.
Good evening, everybody. I'm pleased to be here this evening to present the results of our tracking survey for the library. Can we move to the next slide?
Can you hang on just for a second? We're going to increase the volume.
Sure, no problem. Thank you.
All right. Say test, test, test a couple of times.
Test, test, test a couple of times.
There we go. Is that better, everybody? A little bit, maybe.
All right, great. Does that work better now?
No, not really. Is there any way we can turn that up? Fabulous. We're working on it on this end. Hang on.
Okay, yeah, I don't have control on this end.
Think loud.
Okay. All right, is that better?
Hang on. Okay, we're gonna try it. Go for it.
Okay, good evening. I'm Brian Godby from Godby Research. Can you hear me now?
Keep going. Thank you,
Okay.
Brian.
Great. Thank you very much for the opportunity to present the results of our latest survey for the library. As you know, this was an online and phone survey, which means landline and cell calls to do interviews. It means text and email invitations to an online version. Obviously, we live in an online world, so that's the focus of the interviews. But regardless of how we get them, they are representative of likely November 2024 voters in Sonoma County. We were in the field in the middle of May, the 6th through the 12th. The average phone survey, which is still our metric for gauging length of a survey, was 18 minutes. The sample size was 555. Our goal had been 500. So that gives us a better margin of error at 4.16% plus or minus for the overall result. Next slide, please. And one more. jumping right into the findings, this is the ballot question that we asked, and you see the wording on the right-hand side of the slide. It meets all the statewide legal requirements. It's not more than 75 words. It has to have a tax rate, obviously, which in this case is renewing the current 1/8 cent sales tax. It has to show how much it raises annually, which is approximately $18.7 million. It has to have a term, which in this case until ended by voters, and then it can have other things like independent citizens oversight and requiring the funds go to the Sonoma County Library and no money for Sacramento. The rest of the language is largely ours to work with as we think is best, and we've identified key programs that the money would help maintain. It's not all of the programs, but it's sort of the top version of them. Because we are limited to 75 words, we can't talk about all the good things that you might spend the money on. We asked, would you definitely vote yes, probably vote no, or definitely vote no or don't know? And when we add the definitely's and probablys together, you see we're at, in this survey, at 80%. In the survey we conducted in July of 2023, we were at 79%. So while not a statistically significant increase, it has certainly gone up a little bit, and that's always a good thing to see. Next slide, please. The next set of questions was a much longer list, no longer bound by the 75-word limit. So these are all the kinds of things that we might spend the money on should the measure be successful. These were presented in a random order, and the order that you see here is basically the ranking that we got from doing our analysis of the voter responses. We do that by assigning numeric values to the response categories that you see across the bottom of the slide, and then creating an intensity scale, which is a pretty abstract way of doing it, but it's a very accurate way of doing it. However, we also add the much more likely and somewhat more likely together, and that's represented by the range and the blue arrow here that you see on the kind of middle of the slide. And that puts it into context of the 2/3 that we need to be successful, which is, of course, an important benchmark to keep in mind. So at the top of this list, we have provide safe places for children for after school. That's 79%, at least somewhat more likely to support the measure. Maintain children's and teen books, materials, summer reading programs, and homework help at virtually the same level. Keep library staff from being laid off. Keep qualified librarians, obviously slightly different sides of the same coin. Maintain children's story times, classes, and services. Maintain book and digital collections. Maintain literacy tutoring programs. And finally, in our top group, provide public access computers and free Wi-Fi at all libraries. Now, those are all the top tier, which are basically statistically tied. Then we go into the second tier, which starts at virtually the same level and includes providing senior services. And if I could go to the next slide. That second tier continues with extend library service to underserved communities, maintain disabled access, maintain hours 7 days a week, enhance senior classes and services, provide 24/7 digital access, keep libraries open for cooling, warming, and charging centers during extreme weather events, and finally modernize 14 local libraries. That rounds out the second tier. And while we start above the 2/3 threshold, the last items, while they are certainly important, they're just not above the 2/3 threshold, as are the final tier, which dip down into the 60s even further. So they're not as important to the voters that might be casting ballots on this. Next slide, please. The next slide is what we call informational statements. So these are sort of positive things that are the result of this measure, as well as some accountability provisions. And the methodology is largely the same. Again, looking at the percentages where we've added the much more likely and somewhat more likely together, you see that all the money raised by this measure will be controlled locally, go to local libraries, and cannot be taken by Sacramento. That's an accountability provision that we talked about in the ballot question as well. And it rates at the top of the list at 78% in round numbers, at least somewhat more likely to support the measure. The measure does not increase taxes, just maintains the current rate, is a critical piece of information the voters need to know. That's at virtually that same high level of support based on knowing that information, and obviously is key to communicate so people know what they're voting on. The library provides books, computer access, printing, and classes and services for those who can't afford to buy them is next. Then community libraries provide a safe place for youth to do homework and participate in after-school programs. We saw something similar to that in the previous list, so that is a constant theme. Public libraries are one of the few important community centers left that benefit children, families, seniors, disabled, and low-income residents. The measure helps continue that service. Without the measure, our libraries are facing cuts to hours of up to 2 days a week and cuts to book budgets and services as costs increase. So that's at 77%, at least somewhat more likely. So you see all of these items on this slide are very highly ranked and well over the 2/3 threshold necessary to be successful. Next slide, please. The next slide continues this top grouping, and they're still in the 70s because we rank the items based on that intensity score. They sometimes don't necessarily look like they add up, but they in fact do. Thousands of children participate in Sonoma County Library reading and education programs each year. That's important. County library is completely separate from county government, also important. Many current library facilities are over 50 years old, and their computers and networks and technologies need updates. The library programs for children and teens, including homework help and reading resources, are critical to providing students the resources they need. Strict accountability provisions, including citizens oversight, another accountability component, and the measure is critical to maintaining computer networks and a high-speed access for residents who don't have access to that at home. So next slide, please. Thank you. And this is the remainder of these items. The first two slides are much higher ranked, so that's really the focus and where people need that information. These are important, but as you can see, by the time you get to the bottom of this list, we're now at the 2/3 threshold. Next slide. So in addition to those informational statements, there were a few others, largely negatives, which we need to balance out the interviews. And we then come back to our ballot question a second time. And as you know, we started at 80%. And this one's a little bit lower. It's at 77%, so a couple points lower. The intensity is a bit stronger, which is good. But compared to July of last year, we are also a little lower than where we started in this survey, about the same amount. The good news is we only need 2/3 for this measure to be successful. So we've got a 10-point cushion over that. Now, that doesn't mean it's easy. There's certainly work to do. And that work focuses on that 21% that are probably yes to make sure they stay on board. But this is certainly a green light saying this measure should go forward if the commission agrees, and that then there's work to do to see that it gets approved by the voters. That's the presentation we have for this evening. Certainly happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Thanks so much. This is a tremendous amount of work. We appreciate you digging down, not just once, but twice, into the thoughts of the Sonoma County possible voters and about the ballot measure. Are there questions from the commission? Yes.
Is it concerning to you, the trend from the first to the second survey, that there's less people that are sure, and that the overall, it's not changing a lot, but there's a trend in a way that wouldn't help passing the measure? What do you?
Yeah, it is, well, let me say this first. 77% is a great place to wind up. If all of my clients were at that place, they'd all be very, very happy. So we should acknowledge that first. Secondarily, there is work to do. That's not a slam dunk. There are no such things. But while I'd like it to not have gone down, it would be an anomaly if it hadn't. Because virtually all of our surveys from last year to this year have seen a decline. And I think it has to do with the general political unrest and concern about the economy. I think that leading indicators, economic indicators suggest GDP and jobs and stock market, all that things are pretty good, but that doesn't seem to be sinking in. And so this is pretty typical of what we've seen in this particular environment. That doesn't mean I'm happy about it, but I think that given the 77% where we wound up, I still think we're in really pretty good shape. We just have to do our job and get the word out, your independent campaign effort. And as my high school track coach said, we have to run through the tape.
Other questions?
Thank you.
Michelle.
Hey, Brian, this is Andy Elkin from Healdsburg. I have a question, I guess, about the difference between page 4, which is uninformed support, and page 10, which is informed support. It looks to me like after sharing a number of informational statements, support actually went down, and I would naively think it would go up. This is not the only time I've seen this happen. I saw other survey results to something unrelated where the same thing took place. Can you offer any thoughts about why that might happen after we shared reasons for people to support it, that they would be less supportive?
Yeah, the informational list was longer than we presented this evening, just in deference to time. And it included some negatives. It included some standard anti-tax kinds of things that you might hear, or somebody might write in a ballot argument against the measure. And so it's not just the positives, but were some negatives included as well. So people had the full breadth of what might happen in a campaign. And I think that's what explains the difference.
Thank you.
Other questions? Comment? Yes, Commissioner Ingram.
I'm wondering, the language in the ballot that we have, the current one for Measure Y, does not refer to independent oversight committee. I'm wondering how important that term independent is, whether you have an opinion on that.
Yeah, I think it's critical. It is actually in the ballot question. It's down in that bottom clause with independent auditing and citizens oversight. So if you go to one of the ballot question pages, keep going a little bit further.
Yeah, I saw that, but in the ballot measure itself, the word independent is not in the ballot measure.
So by ballot measure, you mean the full text of the measure that you're voting on tonight?
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Yeah,
I can answer that.
I don't have that in front of me. The thing that's most important to me as a pollster and predicting voter outcomes is the 75-word statement that appears on the ballot. And there are certainly opportunities, two more slides actually, that not only is there the 75-word ballot statement, but there is also the positive argument in favor of the measure. So those kinds of things could be raised there as well. There's more words in the ballot argument than there are allowed in the ballot question. So that's another place where that could occur.
Erica?
So on page 301, the ballot language, this is in the resolution. It does have this independent auditing. This is the resolution that you will vote on next month. So it's in the resolution.
I'm not talking about the resolution, I'm talking about the ordinance itself.
Are you talking about Measure Y? I believe it was in the Y.
Present Measure Y. And also, it's not in proposed.
It wouldn't be in the ordinance. The ordinance is not the ballot measure. The ordinance is the way these work. The commission approves the ordinance, and then there is a ballot measure to ask the voters to agree to allow that ordinance to take effect.
To the audience, that was Jeff Mitchell, our counsel, the commission's counsel. Sorry, thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Any public comment? Okay, thanks very much, Brian. Much appreciated.
Thank you all for your time.
Thank you.
All right, moving on, we have a presentation on human resources. What the Measure Y sales tax have had it, what impact the Measure Y sales tax has had on human resources.
Good evening, Chair Doyle, Library Commissioners, and Director Twell. I'm Suzanne Silva, Human Resources Manager. Thank you for allowing me to present information regarding our department and the impacts we've had on our library system as a result of Measure Y funding. Can everybody hear me okay? Great, thank you. Before I get started, I would like to note that the primary focus on the tax measure was to fund the following: supporting collections, educational programs, children's classes, improving access, including restoring Monday and hours, maintaining aging facilities, and including branch improvements. But none of this could be done or accomplished without people, and this is where my team fits in. I was hired in 2017, just after the sales tax measure was approved by the voters. And initially, we were housed at the Central Santa Rosa branch, but as the staff in the HR department grew, we relocated to the current location right across the street on State Farm Drive. Pictured here is a talented HR team from left to right. Paul Lopez, Senior HR Analyst, myself, Holly Kamazi, Extra Help HR Specialist, Philip Fidel, HR Specialist, Jen Swenson, HR Analyst, Bianca Malekis, HR Analyst, and Deanna Katzon, Administrative Specialist. Together, we provide full HR service to the Sonoma County Library staff. One of the key goals of Measure Y was to keep qualified librarians. But as you know, it takes more than librarians to operate a library. And they need training to retain those qualifications and to carry out the library's mission and vision. Our annual staff day provides an opportunity to present relevant information to all staff on critical topics. After our most recent staff day, an employee provided the following feedback about the program. And this was our first in-person staff day in 4 years. And it was really exciting, and some of you attended. One of the major commitments made by the library was to increase access, and the library has met that promise by providing 7-day-a-week service, increasing online collections, technology programs, and outreach, by increasing programs and outreach. But in order to achieve those goals, we needed one additional element: people. And because of Measure Y, the library has been able to increase its staff by over 136% since fiscal year 2018. And as you can see, there's been some separations due to employee retirements and attrition, but our team also facilitates these transitions. And I can answer questions about turnover at the end of my presentation if you have them. In fiscal year 2021, the library did have to separate its Extra Help staff during COVID closures, but most of them were actually rehired. The library has made additional efforts to hire and retain staff. Specifically, over the past 2 fiscal years, we've hired almost 100 new employees to support the addition of the Sunday hours, a new community engagement services division, and the Bibliobus. Many of the positions were needed to replace the employees that were promoted. And many of those have been after attaining their MLIS degrees and other education and experience. And we've hired bilingual staff to staff the newly opened Roseland branch to provide equitable and essential services to our underserved populations. Another critical component to any organization is not to only hire qualified staff and to keep their knowledge, but to keep their knowledge and skills current. I myself am a lifelong learner, and I subscribe to the philosophy, if you don't lose it, you lose it. If you don't use it, you lose it. Prior to the passage of Measure Y, the library could only fund basic training that was prescribed by the Memorandum of Understanding. But since the passage of the measure, training has become a critical component for library staff. HR partners with the division managers to provide mandatory training, conference opportunities, webinars, and ensure staff are aware of their staff development and wellness benefits. We also ensure that Staff Day offers a robust agenda for learning and employee engagement. Our spending on training has increased significantly. The library reviews each request thoroughly to ensure that the training will benefit the employee skill development and job growth. We are fiscally responsible in using these public funds. As mentioned in the presentation last month by the Public Services team, we recognize that our frontline staff are faced with many challenges and want to ensure that they have the tools they need to work with patrons. We respond to the needs and provide not only the foundation from qualified professionals, but continue to work with branch managers and staff once the training is completed so they can use these skills in their daily work. You may ask how, but our trainers actually meet with the public services and the branch managers by providing, for example, tools and training from the training, and make incident cards to actually give them an opportunity to practice the skills that they use in the training, and the opportunity to, have role playing and things like that, so that when these incidents do happen, they're better trained to deal with the situations on a day-to-day basis. To adapt to changes in organizational culture and create a welcoming and inclusive environment for our diverse patrons and staff, we have implemented an equity, diversity and inclusion training plan. All staff have completed the Justice at Work in Public Libraries training created by Mia Henry. We are continuing this training as part of our new employee orientation curriculum. Additionally, the racial equity team has been working with Be the Change Consulting on a plan to implement key initiatives from input attained from stakeholders throughout the library, including affinity groups and mentorship, training, and revision of core competencies. And this will be carried out throughout this and the next fiscal year. Hiring qualified bilingual staff that can communicate and engage with our diverse patrons is essential to delivering our expanded services. Prior to Measure Y, it is estimated that the library had employed less than 10 bilingual staff. Since the measure, we have increased the number of bilingual staff to over 60, and we continue to qualify more staff with the help of our capable third-party vendor. In 2022, the library partnered with the union to increase the opportunities for bilingual staff and created an in-house translations team, as well as offer additional pay for those who use their skills in an increased capacity, such as outreach and other special events. So what is on the horizon for HR as we continue to support staff? As I said earlier, for the next, this year and the next fiscal year, we'll be working with our Be the Change Consulting and the racial equity team to implement our racial equity team plan and Be the Change plan. We are also in the process of implementing our human resource information system platform. This will help us provide a learning management system, and not only will allow staff to self-select training materials, and we can also better track their enrollments. It will help us to better track their enrollments through the system instead of manually. And also another great feature of this is that we can do our performance evaluations online. In September, open enrollment is approaching, as it happens annually. And we've been evaluating providers and to make sure that we're meeting library staff needs, and we are also being fiscally responsible in choosing those providers. October, the staff day is coming up, and this year the venue will be at Becoming Independent, a local community partner. We are involving staff to develop a robust and engaging agenda that will address current needs, and we look forward to seeing you there. And finally, we will be engaging in successor MOU negotiations when the contract expires at the end of this year. Thank you very much for your time, and if you have any questions?
Thanks very much. It certainly has, HR has changed a lot since you arrived,
Thank you.
and you deserve a lot of credit for that.
Thank
Thanks
you.
very much.
And my team, yes, thank you.
Commissioner Evans.
Thank you. A quick comment and a question, please. Comment with regard to turnover or separation. I was glad to see that even though our staffing has increased substantially compared to the last 3 years compared to the first 3 years on the chart, there has not been much more turnover or separation. So that seems to me to be to your credit. So thank you. The question I have is about training and staff development. Big believer in that. I was glad to see that training budget has increased, but that said, you know, $75,000 a year for 300 plus employees is not, you know, it's not a lot of money per capita. Could you talk a little bit about what training is included in that budget as opposed to what might be other development activities that are budgeted somewhere else and don't get reflected in the training dollars per se?
Sure. So we have two categories that we use for budgeting training. And so one of them is like the overarching training that we use for sexual harassment prevention and other mandated types of training. And then we have a conference budget and things that are for the actual mandated MOU category for training. Then there's other contracted services that may not be, that we don't categorize, and that's probably not included in this, that actually is not included in these amounts. So, and then there are maybe other, so this is basically what HR is funded for training. So other departments may pay for training maybe through their CAL card that isn't expended through this account. So there are other, this is what I capture through the budget numbers that I was able to run in the amount of time that I was able to track this. And Erica can probably provide a little bit more information.
Yeah. So HR basically does the legally required mandated training for the entire library system. That includes staff onboarding. So when new staff are hired, HR has an onboarding process and a series of days that new employees have to come to the library headquarters and get trained. But then each division has its own training budget, and that's where conferences and other kinds of staff development are paid out of. So public services has a training budget, executive services has a training budget, IT. And so those departments manage that. So if we were to, you know, look at in total, how much we pay, it would be significantly higher than 77,000.
I'm really glad to hear that. And at some point, this is not, you know, urgent, but at some point I would love to see a more inclusive figure for all of the investment that we're making in staff development, including conferences, because I think that investment is really important. Thank you.
Yeah, I would also like to add that having the platform that we're implementing now will help us to be able to add more, provide more information. And then also some of the training that we are provide by agencies such as the Call Academy are also not very expensive, and we can train a lot of staff for those, so and to say like more bang for the buck, but it does give us a lot more bandwidth to train staff, and it doesn't cost a lot of money. So that is great training. So but yes, I'm very, excited about being able to create that mindset with the staff. So.
Yeah, that's a follow-up question. Does the HR system that you're implementing enable you to track how much training and development time each staff member has received over the course of a year?
We do have the ability to track the amount of staff time that we can code time that staff does, training on their time sheets. That is possible.
And that would be true even if they were taking training that was low cost or free, we could still look at how much time they were doing that, right?
It is possible, yes.
Yeah. Is there a requirement for how much training or development time staff members are supposed to have in a year?
No, I think unless they have a certification, you know, I have a certification or certain people have certification, there's not a reportable amount of that. And unless it's like harassment prevention training, there's no requirement, that you have a requirement for, specific amounts of times.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Whatever my name is. Thank you. Hi Suzanne, thanks for the report. Two quick questions back to the turnover just briefly. Do you have a sense of the turnover, are those established long-term employees or people who are recently hired and then just it's not for them and they move on, or a sense of the ratio or, my concern is always the loss of institutional knowledge and experience and.
Sure, well, so, I mean, I do have those reports and I can get that information, the turnover information that I have, like, on the sheet in front of me is basically overarching turnover per fiscal year, and basically those turnover informations are a snapshot in time. So when I look at the turnover information, is it a retirement? Is it somebody who, like, when we had to let go of the extra help during COVID and I said they were hired back, those numbers would be higher. So I have information on the types of separations that occur. And it's kind of funny that we just did a CalPERS, CalPERS came to the organization to provide training on, what that involves and what is your pension about. So there may be a lot of retirements coming up because people got that information, so you just never know how that works. But that being said, it's varied throughout the years.
Okay, well, anyway, maybe.
But I can get that, and that information is available, and I think that's a conversation.
Yeah, just an update at some point in time, be interesting.
If you want a trend, yeah, I can find that.
And then my other question, I hope is a brief one. We used to have a trainer, Kyle, the trainer, and then now we don't have, we have a different model for training. And I wondered if you could kind of refresh our knowledge about how the training, how that works now that we don't have a trainer, and the impact of any changes by changing the model of training.
So Nicole Lopez, our senior HR analyst, she's in charge of training, and then Philip Vidal kind of is a training assistant. He basically does a lot of the administrative functions of the training. But she coordinates the training program. So, and we have a sheet I can send you from the SharePoint that says who to contact in HR that really designates in a deeper dive the responsibilities of all the staff in the HR team.
Working better.
Is it working better? I believe it's working better, yeah, because now people know who to call. Everybody still calls me, but I can direct them to staff.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Commissioner Fox.
Yeah, I'd like to support Andy's request for a more inclusive reporting on the training. I think that would be worthwhile.
Sure.
But the question I had separate from that was on the net geo.
NeoGov?
That's coming into place, and I was wondering how that reports, whether that's going to be able to generate reports on performance evaluations and what the status is of our completing our duty to the employees and
To complete it for organizations?
yes.
It will be able to provide with online information that at Stanford right now, we track and maintain the information on evaluations, but it's basically a manual form that we save as a Adobe document.
It would be great if they could provide you that data, give you a printout that would show our performance evaluations, but separate from that, I know we're not going to get that today, but I'm wondering whether we could get a report to keep it manually of where we're at with completing our performance evaluations for employees, how current we are. How far behind we might be, how well we're doing in other places. I think that would be a value to have.
That's it. Yeah.
I was gonna say, so to Commissioner Elkin's question about required training, so other than the sexual or the harassment prevention training, which is required of supervisors. We do have in our core competencies that staff are supposed to do at least 2 trainings a year. With NeoGov, we are actually able to better track those trainings. And NeoGov also has courses that people can sign up for. And with the performance evaluations, what NeoGov will do is it will notify the managers when the evaluations are due, and it basically automates that process. It tells them when they're due. If they don't get it in on time, it prompts them to, get it completed. So that will kind of help HR manage the entire training process as well as performance management. And if there is a mandatory training, NeoGov will notify the supervisor if the employee hasn't actually taken the mandatory training, so that the supervisor can then have a conversation with the employee and make sure that it gets on their calendar so that they are completing the trainings. So it's really designed to help the HR department manage the whole training and performance evaluation process.
Yeah, right now, to do what you're asking, it could be done, but that would be a very manual process to pull all that information.
I know why I asked is that it's been an ongoing problem, not only with our agency, but with the county's agencies too, as far as the performance evaluations being current. People having current performance evaluations, and I think it does employees do a better job, and I think it helps them. Patients and that they have. There's some certainty about if they have a higher supervisor they're doing.
Yeah, Nicole, the senior analyst, we offered the classes from Lieber Cassidy Whitmore, who is another vendor that we utilize to provide that training to our managers. So we've been diligent about taking that training, offering training to and following up with that on it. So it is something that.
I think they're vacuuming or something, but maybe shut the door. It's the here, keep the bugs out.
So I think one of the, it's wonderful that you've finished the Be the Change process throughout the entire system. And we appreciate, the commission appreciates that you've given us the opportunity to take advantage of the Be the Change. I think some commissioners have gone through a lot of EDI training in various other places. And so, but certainly those who have not, we would encourage you again to make sure that you sign up for the Be the Change program. Any other questions?
And we'll be doing our employees this summer. We've done the management and we're having the commissioner training and the employees classes will be having this summer. Thank you.
Thank you. Any public comment? Okay, thanks very much, Suzanne.
Thank you
Much
so much.
appreciated. And with that, we are going to, we're gonna take a look at the Newfront property. Eric, are you gonna walk us through this or? Yeah. It is 9.6 to 9.7. So now 5.4 and 5.5.
We'll start with property first.
Can you give us a page just so that,
Oh,
there we go.
6, yes. So, the premium, as you know, Newfront covers both our property casualty and our workers' comp. And they were broken out into 2 separate policies this year. Even though the coverage period are the same time. So we're talking about the property and casualty this time. There was a little bit of difficulty securing coverage for the Vernville property because it's in a wildfire zone. And so we were able to get the California Fair Plan coverage for the basic perils of fire. And we're working on a policy to get a wraparound policy to cover all of the other other coverages. And so once that is obtained, you maybe a change in the quote. As of now, it's 132,441. So
Any questions, Commissioner?
and I do have the broker on the line if you have any questions, so.
Okay. Any public comments? All right, then we are, I'm looking for a motion then. Second. Okay, that is a first and a second to move that the Sonoma County Library Commission authorize the library director to execute the agreement with Newfront Insurance Company to provide property liability, auto, umbrella, directors and officers and employment practices, liability insurance coverage for the period of July 1st, 2024 through July 1st, 2025. Okay. Commissioner Cahill.
Yes.
Commissioner Engelhardt.
Yes.
Yes.
Commissioner Goldberg. Yes. Commissioner Howard.
Yes.
Mr. Evanridge.
Yes.
Mr. Galagos.
Yeah.
Commissioner McCarthy.
Yes.
Mr. McMillan.
Yeah.
I'll make it unanimous. Okay. The next one.
Okay, so we have the workers' compensation renewal proposal, and it's also going to be covered from July 1st through July 24th through July 1st, 2025. And there was a increase in the premium from 263,000 to quoted 344,000. It's basically, it increases primarily due to an increase in the workers' comp experience modification rating. And then there's a class code rate increase, and that's basically the classification of delivery drivers and facility classification, which really is not anything that under the library's control. It's just how the state of California rates that classification. And the modification, the modification rating is based on the previous claims for the previous 3 years, whether they increase or decrease.
Any questions, Commissioner? Commissioner Upton.
Yeah, my question is about the phrase workers' comp experience modification. Are you saying that that increase reflects claims that we've made over the past 3 years?
Not only claims, but we would make more or less claims, but basically the cost of the claim that we've had to pay out. So if the claims cost increase, then they use a multiplier and they will base that on the cost of the claim, and they will use that rating to determine what the premium is.
So and this might be a question for the broker who's on the line, but it looks like premium has increased by about $80,000, which 30% roughly. I understand that's due to two factors, one of which we have no control over, which is the 9420 class code, but the other is based on our claims. What percentage of the increase is due to claims that we've made?
Not our claims, it's the employees' claims.
Right.
Right.
Our library families claims, yeah.
Well, there could also just be maybe one claim that is a very high cost claim that the library may not have any control over, so that is a kind of a sticky wicket. I don't know, maybe Gail or Lacey might want to chime in here.
Hi, yes, this is Lacey Torkelson. I can talk to the increase. There was roughly a 24% increase. Oh, sorry, can everybody hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, So there was roughly a 24% increase, as Suzanne had mentioned. It went from roughly 278,000 last year to 344,000 this year. And there's a couple of different factors that are the reasoning for the increase. Part of it is the experience modification increase. This is your ranking amongst your peers within the industry. With that ranking, it was a 17% increase from last year to this year, because your experience mod went from a 190 to a 223, which essentially means that you're being debited 123% of what your estimated premium is once they go off of the carrier's rates. The other increase would have been off of payroll, but payroll is flat. And your net rate increased by 8% in your governing code. So when you take that 17% mod increase, which is based on your loss history, the 8% rate increase, that's where the 24% overall premium increase comes from. Does that answer your question?
Sort of, not to get nitpicky, but I'm calculating a 30% increase from 263,000 to 344,000. My real question though is if 17% of the 30 is due to our claims, is there anything that we can or should be doing from, for example, a training or safety perspective to try to limit future claims and help keep our costs down?
Right. And Suzanne and our team have been working very hard with putting together different safety programs with our in-house safety loss control person and Berkshire Hathaway's in-force safety people to help with ergonomic trainings and other safety trainings. We also have our internal claims consultant, Jeanette Horder, that has been focusing in on and watching all of the claims to make sure that the reserve levels are set at where they should be set at. And if they're too high, she helps negotiate them down. We've been working very strong with this, and it is a high XMOD, but it's partially to do with the fact that it's the expected loss rates for the specific classification code. And it's just where it's coming in at this point, but we're working hard to reduce it as much as possible. And that's why we do go back multiple times and get management approval to get rates lowered. Gail is actually able to bring the pricing down an additional 4% after the initial quote was released.
Glad to hear that. Thank you.
If I could just chime in a little bit, on page 277 of 304 in your packet, it has all the comparisons of the payroll, the experience mod, the rates, and the premium.
Thank you.
Sure.
Commissioner Gus.
In general, I know Andy is struggling. I think hopefully I'm asking something that's going to help clarify it. We're required as an agency to report our claims history, correct? To you, the claims adjuster person.
Well, to the insurance carrier.
You have reports of our claim history as far as what types of claims they are. Is that correct?
Yes, they're called loss run information.
Right. So if we have a printout of types of claims that are being filed, that would enable Andy or one of the commissioners or the library to decide what areas might need additional training to be able to lower those claims in those particular areas. For example, if there are a lot of stress claims, it would allow somebody to say, okay, well, maybe we need to do some training in stress reduction or mindfulness at work or something like that.
Suzanne, I don't want to take away your thunder, but you work very closely with the Berkshire Hathaway, the insurance carrier, provides a report, and it's detailed by type of injury, tenure, time of day, time of week, and what the occurrences that created the injury. And Suzanne has looked at that and provided, that's how she's working forward with the training, is the most incident types and locations. So I don't want
Then
to
I
take away
think-
your thunder, Suzanne, but you are working directly with those incidents and the workers' comp carrier to address the frequencies and the areas where you can make a difference.
Then I think the question I would have then, and maybe with, hopefully, Andy, if I'm getting in the right area, is that it'd be good if the commission could see a copy of those reports to know where we're having problem areas where, we might be able to provide some policy suggestions or recommendations to how to correct.
So on page 277, the very bottom chart, premium and total cost comparison, you'll see that the biggest difference is in the class code 9420, which Suzanne mentioned is facilities and delivery drivers. This is where 32% of the increase comes from, and it's roughly $55,000. So $55,000 in our increase comes from this class code. And as they explained, we have no control over the class code. So that's, from my perspective, when you look at, the 7% increase was from the public library group, which is the largest group of employees in the library. Facility and delivery is actually one of the smallest groups of employees in the library. So we can certainly find those numbers for workers' comp claims, but it's disproportionately coming from one department. And I don't know if it's because of it's because of the class code. It's not because of an increase in injuries or an increase in workers' comp claims.
And there's a lot of factors that they get safer claims that continue to get involved in, and there are confidential information that's just not appropriate to be discussed in a public forum. So I appreciate the concerns, and like I said in my previous presentation, we are having trainings to address the stresses and the traumas and the ergo issues and all the things that I believe. And I'm going to conferences that sector HR conferences that address workers' comp and injuries and stress. And so, I meet with my HR constituents and we look at these matters and consider along. But always happy to take input and suggestions.
I'm confused. I could make a request in the State Department of Industrial Relations and get a printout from them, what our claim history, claim reports are. We file with them every month. They can give me a printout and say, here's the types of claims, the number of claims that have been filed by Sonoma County Library. So if it's a public record to that extent, which I believe it is, why isn't the commission can't have a copy of that and be able to see it?
So your insurance program is with Berkshire Hathaway. It's not through the state of California. So I don't believe your incidents get reported to the state of California. Your incidents get reported to an insurance company. You're not self-insured. You are with a traditional guaranteed cost work comp program. So it's different than the county work comp insurance program.
Workers' comp is not my area, so but to the extent we're talking about public records, they would not be personalized data. So if you're looking for just generally information about the nature of, like, what are the general classifications of claims that get made? I don't think that's not confidential information. It could not be personalized.
No doubt you can provide a general picture. Commissioner Alkin?
Yeah, I'm sorry if I took this in a direction that I did not intend.
You took it.
So I want to go back to what Erica said, which I think is the relevant point. I was concerned by what seemed like a pretty substantial increase of $80,000. As you pointed out, as we can see on page 277, of that 80,000, 55,000 or about 70% is because of a classification change that has nothing to do with our experience. We have no control over that. So that significantly decreases the amount of the increase that we would have any control over. So while $25,000 is significant, I don't want you to spend $50,000 of effort to address the little part that we have control over. I hope I'm making this clear. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I do have one question. So will future union contract negotiations, will that have an impact on this at all? Okay, great, thanks. Last questions? Comments from the public? All right. Thank you very much. Oh, wait.
I'll make a motion.
Fabulous. Thank you.
I'll second. You can have it.
It was a two of Barbara.
Yeah.
Let's see. Read that. Can you read your motion?
Page 271. May I read it on his behalf? Commissioner Hauser moves that the Sonoma County Library Commission authorize the library director to execute the agreement with New Front Insurance Company to provide workers' compensation insurance coverage for the period July 1, 2024 through July 1, 2025.
All right.
I'm sorry, can I ask a question? I just want to confirm, we voted on the other insurance as well, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Commissioner Kane.
Yes, again.
Yes.
Commissioner.
Yes.
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 Yes. Commissioner McKenzie. Yes.
Yes.
Now we're.
Thank you.
Thank you. Now we're going to look at the library report.
Evening. So April was a very busy month. As we started our speakers here, our consultant Dan is gonna give you an update on that. I was very busy talking to many organizations. We also held our All Lab Day at the Lister Library. We had a very robust discussion with about 50 people attending, so it was a really good turnout. And there were some areas where future commission action identified, as well as some ways that we identified that the labs could talk to themselves about, what their role and purpose is. And I know that some of those conversations have started to begin. I also had a really lovely good event at Central Library featuring Brian Terry, who is a chef, and James Beard, award-winning cookbook author, and the Friends of Santa Rosa Libraries graciously donated copies of his cookbooks to each attendee, so I got to take one home with me and cook from my cookbook. So it was a great event, and I hope one of many more to come. Any questions about the library? Let's see.
Thank you.
All right, well, now I'm gonna pass it off to Dan.
Hello, just my character. My name is Dan Mullen. I'm a public affairs consultant. Have had the honor of working with a lot of you over the last 8 months. I'm here to recap and summarize some of our work during that time period. My report is on pages 50 to 54. It was submitted a few days ago. We have PowerPoint besides that. Just to read from some of the highlights of all the work that we've been doing. We've been meeting every 2 weeks with senior staff. Reviewed all the marketing and collateral material the library does, and Ray oversees that as a public information officer, doing a great job. Reviewed all the plans, the facility reports, the economic impact report. We've been working with the Library Foundation on the Roseland preview event. We've worked with a number of lab members, friends of the library members. I see some here this evening. We've outlined the community calendar in terms of a number of outreach opportunities that Director has taken up on. And we've developed a speakers bureau, which trained, 29 people. Get to that in a moment. We had the speakers bureau, 2 afternoons of trainings. We've outlined and updated the do's and don't memo from the attorneys in terms of what can and cannot be communicated. Supported. We've supported the team out in the community in terms of sharing more information with branches, provided input on the expenditure plan, assisted with earned media as related to our efforts on community education. Worked with Brian, as you saw on the survey that was reviewed earlier this evening. We've produced 2 educational materials, one of which I think you received just this week. The other one is still in production. Then in a couple weeks, because of the timing of this meeting and the timing of what we're trying to do, we're actually planning ahead for our family, I call a family meeting on June 18th. And everything is going very well. Chair Doyle is sharing the mail. I have more in a box here, so share more of those afterwards. The outcomes have been significant. As the pollster, Brian already said, the numbers are very, very good. If you look at some of the recent numbers from comparable public agencies, call anybody out in particular, but they're not as strong as this. This is testament to, despite a high inflationary economic environment, you still have very, very strong numbers. So I just want to underscore that. We've trained 29 presenters to go out into the community. I believe that's going to continue for at least a few more weeks. Through our Speakers Bureau, we've engaged with over 275 local community groups. That is significant. These are some community groups I don't know that you all even knew existed before we got started in this effort. The educational mailer that went out earlier this week went out to over 100,000 residents. The one that we're doing next is going to be close to 75,000 additional residents. Part of that is a factor of cost. We want to be prudent in terms of how we're spending limited dollars. And then again, on June 18th, at the Redwood Credit Union Event Center, we'll be having an invited event with over 100 members of the extended family, probably reach around 150. I think we have room for, what's that? About 200 members at the family event? Oh, yeah. The foundation is sponsoring that. So thanks again to the foundation. So all this leads up to the point where I have my recommendation. I had previously shared that earning 2/3 support for a ballot measure requires significant alignment of support among leadership, staff, and the public. It is my firm belief that we have such aligned support now for renewal, and I strongly recommend that you pursue a renewal measure on the November 2024 ballot. And with that, just some final thoughts that are not in the report. I started working with the Sonoma County Library in 2015, 9 years ago. It was a tough time for the library. Look around at Commissioner Heavenridge, Commissioner McKenzie, former Commissioner Whistler. We have come a long ways since then. So as you take up this effort, I just want to remind the institutional knowledge in the room, Chair Doyle, of course, how far we've come and to keep going forward. That, I'll take any questions.
Yes. What is the official event triggers the beginning of the campaign? Is it passage of our ordinance on hopefully in July? Is it the award of a letter by whoever awards letters? Is it the formation of an official citizens campaign? What begins the campaign? And the reason is, when can we begin to say, oh, yes, on measure, whatever it is?
Has been my advice that the office in terms of a citizens campaign might start. All I can speak to is when the public educational effort would end. I'm looking here at the council to jump in, but at the same time, my understanding is the moment that you officially vote on that ordinance or resolution.
Well, both. You'll do both of them at the next meeting. You first reading tonight of the ordinance takes 2 readings. One answer is when the commission approves the ordinance and the resolution. The other practical answer is when the county gives it a number or a letter. So you can say what vote yes on measure something, which will happen probably sometime in July or August, early August. So you can, there's a range. You can support it today. You can tell people as individuals, you can go out and campaign on behalf. Once the commission has acted, obviously, then there is a measure headed to the ballot. And once the county has given it a letter designation, you know what it is. One of the distinctions that Dan's talking about is the difference between what can the library do versus what needs to be done by the public. So the library's involvement right now has been a lot of information, both information gathering and sharing. And to a certain extent, that can continue during the campaign. But the library is hamstrung by the need to be balanced and provide factual information and not advocacy. You all as individuals are free to do any advocacy work you want to do. And private citizens can advocate, staff can advocate on their own time. But that's the distinction that he's drawing.
Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
The question? Commissioner McKenzie.
So 2 quick questions. So second reading? Not tonight. And Erica and I were at educating the Roanoke Park Chamber of Commerce today. And I came home and then I got my educational brochure in the mail to educate me. Anyway, just wondering who the 101,000 residents were selected, who those were, likely voters, and how did you split them between 101 and 74, and what was the difference in the population?
Sure. So as many of you probably already know, it's a sophisticated audience here. We're looking at around 90% turnout for this sort of election this year. As part of our educational effort, we are assessing where voters might stand on these issues. For example, there was a reply card attached to that, as well as a QR code that we have today. Ray was reporting to me earlier that we were getting about a dozen responses an hour in terms of what, right? In terms of what people were saying they wanted to see from the library moving forward. So the assessment and feedback loop is in terms of the 101,000, that's countywide, the 74,000 city residents. My thinking is generally, having done this a few times, my thinking is that city residents, just because they're living in cities, tend to be more distracted. They tend to have lower response rates for one piece versus 2. So going back out to them allows us to better connect with city residents.
So this population of 101,000 are likely voters then? And it's the same population the second time, but we're just not going to do everybody the second time?
We are not remailing out to, we're not mailing a second piece out to people who live in unincorporated areas.
Thank you.
Any questions? For those of you who have not worked with Dan before, he is very modest and he hasn't just worked for the library, but he's done a tremendous amount of political campaign advice for people all over California. Beyond. So we're delighted to have your advice on this really important issue. Thanks, Dan. Any public comments? Before we get into finance, do people want to take a small break? All right, we're gonna take a small break, 5 minutes, and we'll be back to talk about finance.
Jury nullification. Yeah.
It is being suggested to me. Let's see. All right. So finance. This is guaranteed to bring us all together. Money. Just wait. Yes, that'd be great. Thank you. Are we recording, Lisa? Okay, thank you.
Good evening. I'll summarize the report that was presented to the finance committee at its regular meeting on May 20th, 24, which was the financial report through April 30th, 2024, which marks 83% of the fiscal year that has transpired. With that, we have total revenues of 37 million. And property tax actual to date are the 25 million or 94% of the approved adjusted budget. And this represents an increase in March that was approved by the commission for about $528,000. Property tax receipt from April, which is our second installment that was paid for about $10.1 million. Under sales tax receipts were $10.3 million through the end of April, which is 62.7% of the budgeted tax revenue, compared to 67% of the fiscal year. As you know, there's a 2-month lag in sales tax. The final sales tax receipts for fiscal year 24 is received in August of 2024. As previously stated, sales tax revenues do trend upward in the month of February, May, and June, and we have seen that in February to May. But as discussed in the finance committee, there still is a gap from where we would like to be in this time of the fiscal year. So the comparison of the actual where we are at 62.7% compared to where we are in the fiscal year at 67% is about a difference of 4%. So assuming that there could be a shortfall of 4% by year end, that would be approximately $660,000, and it could be more than that. Other revenues are on track to exceed revenue targets for the fiscal year and offset this potential shortfall. Specifically, interest earned year to date under sales tax is $460,531, and under property tax is $315,276, which offsets any potential shortfall. Furthermore, expenditures are under budget, so this creates a savings that also helps offset any shortfalls under tax. As a result of these mitigating factors, there's no impact to services that are foreseen for this fiscal year, and receipts will continue to be monitored very closely and inform the finance committee. The second point on the potential shortfall is the impact on fiscal year 24-25, which will be discussed also when the consideration proving the next year's budget will be discussed. During the budget workshop on March 27, 2024, it was discussed that the assumptions underlying the projections for next fiscal year are based on receiving the projected revenue in the current fiscal year that ends on June 30th, 2024. And if there is a shortfall in the current year, then it's the domino effect into next year. But that will, the actual impact will not be known until August. And in the event that there is a shortfall in next year, the library has a strong toolbox of strategies to use to further mitigate those of a potential deficit. And we can discuss that in the next item when we discuss the budget. Moving on to other revenues. Total revenues under other are 1.6 million or 107.7%, which refers back to where these other revenues are exceeding our projections and therefore offset shortfalls in other areas. Other revenues include grants, donations, and interest earned on our cash balances. Moving into total expenditures, they are 34.7% or 71.4% of the budget. And salaries salaries and benefit actual expenditures through April 30th are about 22 million or 77% of the total budgeted expenditures. And I do expect that we will be within budget at year end. Cash balances are 23.6 million for property tax, 20 million under sales tax, and their restricted cash is 5 million. And those are delineated in your charts. In terms of fund balance, under property tax, it's estimated at 11.9 million. Sales tax is 7.5 million at this time. And depending on looking forward into the year end, which will be this month, this will change depending on the actual expenditures and revenues for this fiscal year. That summarizes my presentation. I'll take any questions.
Any questions? Any public comments? Great, thank you so much, Marina. Next item is the commissioner liaison reports. I don't have anything to add to my chair report. However, I will remind everybody, I think I've reminded everybody the last couple of months, this is a very important time to get in touch with your elected officials. It's budget time, it's budget time locally, find out what your own town is doing, find out what's going on around you. Make sure that you write to Governor Newsom, write to your electeds to say, no, library funding is incredibly important. And also do it at the national level as well. It's the food chain. The federal dollars goes to the state, the local, so it's very, in addition to, of course, the major local funding that we have, but it's very important for legislators and their staff to hear from constituents. So, any other additions to other commissioner reports? Yeah.
I actually just have a question. You had said in your email that we might be having a little competition between us and the foundation.
I was going to wait for the foundation liaison report to throw that in, but hey. Might as well do it now since it's my report. I did get a note from the chair of the foundation, and the foundation board has thrown down the gauntlet, and they would like to challenge us to a reading competition this summer. So what would be wonderful is if someone could come up, not that we don't all know how to register for the summer reading program, but if someone could come up to the microphone and tell us all, remind us all how we register for the summer reading program, that'd be great. Come on up. Not to put anybody on the spot.
That's me. You go to any local, you go up to the front desk, the children's service office, and we can help you sign up it. You don't need a library card, you just need your name, and we will give you a lovely handy pamphlet that our team, including Ray's team, worked really hard on. Here, and we will put you into Beanstalk, or you can find yourself up on a Beanstalk. That's it, it's as simple as that. You can also, when you sign up, you will also be entered for some of the drawings that we have this year, lots of prizes, including an instant camera with a little mini printer, the magnetron, a telescope, and we have 2 hot air balloon rides that we're gonna raffle. So between June 1st and July 1st, you'll be entered for that raffle. Unfortunately, only teens and adults are able to do that. So, do you have any questions?
Thank you very much. So let me remind you that there are 11 of us and there are only, I believe, 9 on the foundation board. So we should already be able to get a head start. And no one's going to be grading, but do sign up. We think it'll be a lot of fun, and who knows, there will be a monetary challenge. What?
I'm gonna personally check to see if all of
Uh-oh.
Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner McKenzie.
If we accept this challenge. Does what we read, is that public knowledge
No.
to our challengers?
No. You can read, so we're not gonna read
Not gonna be judged.
tomes and you can read trash.
No judgment.
That's no judgment. Yes.
Well, can we sign up directly online?
Right now.
Okay, okay, sounds good.
You can go to it on the bookmark, it's a QR code, it'll take you right there.
There you go. So we'll grab one of those as we leave. And there's a QR code. Even better. And if you don't want to, that's fine, but it sounds like it's a lot of fun, and who knows, we may be able to figure out something that we can both win. We can challenge somebody next year, who knows? Let's see. The additional commissioner reports? Nobody has anything to add to their commissioner reports, all right. Finance committee report. Commissioner Elkin?
Thank you, Chair Doyle. I know we've got a lot to cover tonight, but I wanted to make a brief comment. Because we do have the budget coming up to vote on. And I wanted to draw attention to something that Myrna just shared in the financial reports. And that was the subject of considerable discussion and debate at the last finance committee meeting. As I think you know, because you've heard it from me all year, we've been watching sales tax revenues very closely. And our property tax revenue has been tracking almost exactly with projection. Our expenses have all been well controlled, but sales tax has been lagging a little bit. And Myrna has advised us to take a wait and see approach, which we've been doing, but we have been watching it very, very closely. Given the fact that it looks like we're going to come in a little below what had been projected, the question that we raised and discussed was, gee, should we revise the budget? And Myrna discussed this with us and persuaded me that we should not at this time. And so I wanted to draw your attention to the top of page 56 in the packet. And just take a moment to go over that, because we will have to be voting on this a little bit later tonight. The projected sales tax revenue for next year is based on the assumption that sales tax revenue would increase about 3% from this year. But this year was considered to be the budgeted amount. And so if actual receipts fall short, that would suggest that we may be overstating what we can expect next year. what Mira pointed out, and what's highlighted in the top paragraph, is it possible to go to page 56, Lisa, in the document, the top paragraph, please? First of all, we won't know until August, if in fact sales tax revenues are lower than expected. But even if they are, we have a number of other tools available to us. We have a contingency fund that's available to offset a shortfall. If necessary, we could use fund balance. Historically, over the last couple of years, the library staff and Myrna and her team have done a great job of controlling expenditures, and we've consistently come in a little below what was budgeted. So we've got tools available to cover that. So I just want to point out that we had the discussion. We'll continue to watch this very closely, but I'm convinced that that is not a reason to look for a revision of the budget now. What we're going to be looking at later tonight, very, very close to the great presentation that we got at the budget workshop. Myrna and her team have updated the budget to reflect, for example, the increased insurance costs that we've already discussed. And so I hope that everybody will join me in voting to approve the budget that we're going to consider later. That's my only comment. Thank you.
Thanks. Questions for Andy? Public comments? Okay. Commissioner Hopper? Commissioner Goldberg, anything to add? Yep. All right, then we'll move down to the consent and public comment. Yes.
Oh, just can I ask comment about
Commissioner
Commissioner Goldberg's report? I see in here that Azaida Delgado reported to that commission, and that H&G is opening a new playback memory lab station in the Healdsburg Library. As we know, that's been wildly popular and down at the History and Genealogy Library. I didn't know about that, and I wondered how we can get other libraries to also have this kind of expansion.
I'm gonna let Sarah Van
Get
Fleet
back to
answer
us?
that question.
It doesn't have to be today.
It doesn't have to be today.
We can certainly look at.
Okay. Sounds good. Let's see. And next month, we're going to see Commissioner Goldberg's the film that Commissioner Goldberg helped to develop. Yeah. This was a long meeting, so we decided it was probably not the day to do it. All right, into the consent calendar. These matters include routine financial and administrative actions that may be approved by consensus. Any commission member or member of the public may request that an item be removed from the calendar and have it placed with the action items. The commission will approve the minutes of the prior meeting in summary format. All right. So do we have a move to approve the consent calendar?
So move.
Second.
But if anyone would like to make a mention of their lab appointments before we go. I would.
Commissioner Kennedy, would you like to comment now or as we're going through?
Why
Then let's, I got first and I have a second. Mr. Elton was the second. Sorry. No, he wasn't. Mr. Cahill was the second. Any comment? All right, then, Commissioner Cahill,
Yes.
Commissioner Elton,
Yes.
Commissioner Engbar.
Yes.
Commissioner Goldberg. Yes. Commissioner Freeman.
Yeah.
Commissioner Hauser.
Yes.
Commissioner Heavenridge.
Yeah.
Commissioner Lagos.
Yeah.
Commissioner Kennedy. Yes. Commissioner McMillan.
Yes.
And I will make it unanimous. Commissioner McKenzie, comments?
Yes, my comment is I'd just like to read into the record some of our outstanding new additions to our library advisory board. Other commissioners might want to read, their appointees, that there is a process to this. It is an interview process, it's submission of paperwork. So, there's something, it's to it. And we really, I just want to go on record. We have Gabriella DeWald, who's been our team member, a very good team member for the past year. And she wants to renew for another year. Our teen appointments are for only a year, which really works out well. But anyway, Brett, glad that she's just been approved. We have a brand new person, Paulina Brasington, who's bilingual Spanish, English, and will add a really nice additional outreach person to our outreach efforts. And Glenn Brasington, who is our other team member, who this will be his third one-year term, and he's a great guy too. So anyway, just wanted to get those names out in public because they're really, we have a really good layout. Thank you. Any other comment?
Just one minor comment. I believe the Brassingtons are related and we don't have, yes, we don't have a policy that addresses conflict of interest. And so I think at some point we should probably, even though this is an unusual case, he's a student, I think that we might want to talk about creating a policy about conflicts of interest in some of our advocacy groups or supportive organizations. All right, let's see, actions by motion. 9.1, the adoption of the proposed fiscal year 2024-25 budget. This is the big one.
I move approval.
Good evening, Commissioner. Director DeVolt.
Yes.
Sorry. That's I've seen these words in our budget this year. We have a $52 million budget this year. That is slightly higher than last year. I think we were 51.3 last year, so slightly higher. Again, this budget process is a team effort. It takes many months and many people to produce this document, as well as a team of folks at admin who put together your binders and make it easy for you to follow along. I just want to mention again that, you know, as Dan reminded us, that last year was actually a fantastic year for the library in many different ways. In addition to our great circulation, our status as number 5 in the state for Libby and Parks Passes. You know, we are seeing we're healthy financially as an institution. Even with those fluctuations in our sales tax revenues, we have a healthy fund balance that we can use, as well as our contingency fund, to offset and weather those storms. And one of the things we are doing this next year to increase our financial stability is to increase our stabilization fund from 15% to 20%. And this will allow us to have 2.7 months of expenditures in reserve. Last year, 15% covered only 2 months. And we have seen an increase in costs. And so we believe that it is a prudent thing to increase our stabilization fund to offset any potential loss of revenues. We are also, procuring a new bibliobus. And along with our new bibliobus, we will be hiring a 1.0 FTE, a librarian 3 who will specialize in outreach. And this is included in the budget to help expand and coordinate our bibliobus outreach. And I can tell you, this week, the bibliobus has been in Guerneville because of the closure. And we are getting reports that people are very happy to at least be able to go to the library and have someone greet them and help them get their books. Lastly, our capital projects are progressing nicely. Yes, we're going to be moving them, especially the Healdsburg project, into next fiscal year. But I can report that staff are already working on the Kenilworth Teen Center in Petaluma. They were pouring concrete. And we are slated to close Petaluma July 1st. The bibliobus will be there that week. Yeah, and the bibliobus will be there that week too. So this shows how important having that outreach vehicle is. It can't be everywhere all the time, but it can be where we need it most.
And that was Guerneville this week, and it will be Petaluma the first week of July. And we're also working with the city of Healdsburg on a temporary we have a temporary location identified. We are negotiating a lease for that temporary location. We are very close to being finished with that. And so we will have a location for people to go to when Healdsburg Library is closed. So I'm now going to turn it over to Myrna, who's going to walk you through our budget.
And just to note that since we have gone through the workshop and the finance committee has also been looking at things, we would be delighted to hear about changes in particular.
So I'll walk you through the finer details of the budget. As Director Thibault mentioned, the commission did hold a budget workshop on March 27th of this year, where the library presented in depth its proposed fiscal year 24-25 budget. And as normal, the library has a strong structure in terms of its policies and procedures, as well as fiscally strong position to weather any economic ups and downs. But the basis of the budget, we go back to the reimagining plan, that sets the priorities for the budget development, in addition to reliable major revenue sources and compliance with the Measure Y ordinance and expenditure plan. The budget also increases access to community by funding a new bibliobus, branch modernizations, and a new bibliocommons. We continue to make improvements to managing the capital projects budgeting and increasing the stabilization fund, of course, adhering to prudent policies and procedures. External factors that can impact our revenues and overall operations include economic conditions. And currently we are in one of those times that national monetary policies have tempered inflation from a couple of years ago. And as a result, the changes in the federal interest rate has slowed down growth of revenues, and in particular, the sales tax that's more sensitive to these economic ups and downs. There's also natural disasters that we have experienced, and currently we are officially in a fire time. So we hope that we will not experience any of that, but we know that we have been subject to those kinds of natural disasters. Also key is the important partnerships that we have with our cities and the County of Sonoma, especially as we pursue state grants and partnership for branch modernization projects, or just partnering without grants, but there's always this partnership with our JPA partners. And we will continue to monitor the budget regularly for any necessary adjustments in response to external factors. Highlights of this year's budget include a total appropriations of $52 million. This is $996 in new revenue. It includes 233.85 full-time equivalent positions. And this FTE level represents approximately 300 people. Next year's budget, I already mentioned the extras, the bibliobus, staffing for the bibliobus, and supporting those expanded services. And also I'm proposing an increase to the stabilization fund as a prudent policy action. The next slide goes into further detail in terms of dollars. This chart, the first column to your left is the description of the line items. The second column is, as you can see, is the property tax. Property tax is forecasted at 27.6 million, with the total sources of revenue equaling 28.3 million. And on the expenditure side, total operating non-capital expenditures is 28.3 million. These are all numbers that are rounded, and you can also see that revenues cover the expenditures by a very tiny, small margin. And this is possible really because of the grants and the very generous donations that augment programming. The total expenditures under capital are 28.9 million for the year. Under sales tax, the next column over, there's been a lot of discussion around this. At this time, forecasted sales tax receipts are at $16.8 million. Total combined sales tax revenue is $17.2 million. And on the expenditure side, total operating non-capital expenditures are $17.2 million. And these expenditures are less than the operating revenues by a small margin. And total expenditures, including capital, are $23 million for the fiscal year. Total use of fund balance is 6.5 million. That's combined property tax and sales tax. And this funds the capital improvement program or our modernization projects. And the total budget is $52 million for the year. As I noted in the transmittal memo, there are a couple of items that I'd like to note. One is that this budget, as of June 5th, compared to the budget that was presented during the budget workshop in March, this budget is increases expenditures by $190,354, primarily due to the workers' compensation and increased costs from the county controller that supports our accounts payable. I also want to take a moment to note that the fiscal year 25 revenue projections are based on the assumption that we meet the FY 24 sales tax revenue targets in the current year. Recently, a revenue gap has become more evident in fiscal year 24, where final actual sales tax receipts for the year will not be known until late August. And in the event that the library does experience a revenue shortfall in fiscal year 24, this would generate a deficit in fiscal year 25. And the actual impact, again, will not be known until the first quarter of next fiscal year. As I have mentioned, and the Finance Chair Elkind has mentioned, is that the library has established a very strong policies and procedures and is in a good financial position to weather these ups and downs in the economy. And the library has policies such as the contingency fund, the fund balance policy, or a robust fund balance, and other strategies that can be tapped into, that can be used to address any deficit. And if that were the case, in the first quarter, I would be presenting recommendations to the Finance Committee and then the Commission on how to address those. So where does our funding go? We like to present our expenditures in terms of people, places, and resources. And the lion's share goes to people, salaries, and benefits for a total of $8.4 million or 58% of our total budget. Resources, which are services and supplies, are $14.4 million, which is 28%. And places, our branch modernizations and other capital projects equal $6.5 million or 13%, for a total of $52 million in expenditures. Appropriations by division, you have seen this. It has not changed since the budget workshop. But just to summarize, the largest expenditures here include public services, which is 34% of our budget, and facilities is 22% of our budget. This chart represents our operating funds and also illustrates the distribution of our FTE, or our people. We are proud that most of our resources are dedicated to the branches for direct services and their support. Funding dedicated to branches is 78% of the budget. And that includes 42% to public services and community engagement, 36%, and 42% to public services and community engagement, 36% to the support services that include the facilities, IT, collections, and communications. Administration is 12% of the budget. That includes executive services, budgeting and accounting, and human resources. On the my right side chart that shows FTE for a total of 233.85 FTE. 213 FTE, or 91% of those FTE, provide direct services to patrons or support to the branches, while 20 FTE are allocated to administration. This slide shows all our funding sources. Funding sources are the sum of operating revenue under property tax and sales tax, plus the fund balance associated with those, with them. And funding is also augmented by the gifts and donations from our friends of the library and the foundation. So our total sources here, property tax is 53% of those sources. Sales tax is 32% when we look at all the combined revenues. Donations come in about 255,000. And then we also have interest and charges for services that is about 1%. And intergovernmental grants and contracts are 658,000. An important factor in the budget formulation is applying the allocation of major revenue policy that applies to property tax and sales tax only. And these are the ratios that you have seen before for the service-oriented division, administration division, and capital projects. The next slide shows the actual dollars associated with those ratios. Property tax represents $28.9 million. Sales tax is $23 million. There are some exceptions to these ratios as discussed in the memo, such as Sunday hours the cost of Sunday hours are 100% paid for by Measure Y for a total of $2,762. When Measure Y went before the voters, expanded hours on weekends was identified as an important measure of increasing access to libraries. Workers' comp, retiree reimbursements, OPEB, actual accrued liability, and EAP and the contingency fund are also allocated 60% to property tax and 40% to sales tax, as they support the entire workforce or cannot be allocated to a specific division. The fund balance policy provides direction on how to use fund balance. In fiscal year 25, the estimated unrestricted fund balance under property tax is $10.4 million. And under sales tax, it is $6.7 million for a total of $17.1 million. This is after funding the reserves under IT, facilities, the capital improvement fund, and the stabilization fund at 20% of expenditures. And I do have to note that actual fund balances depend on the actual ending fund balance in the prior fiscal year. I am excited to note that this budget achieves the stated goal of 20% funding the stabilization fund at 20% of budgeted expenditures. So the stabilization fund would be a total of approximately $9.5 million. This creates a robust rainy day fund that is a essential strategy for navigating economic ups and downs. And it also allows for the library to better plan for the unrestricted balances. Now that you reserved funds for those for these priorities that were mentioned, you know what's available to use for revenue shortfalls, for example, or funding one-time priority projects. Overall, our budget accomplishments here are to sustain a Sunday hours at all branches, add a second bibliobus, increase the stabilization fund, and continue capital budget procedures and increase reporting for the information technology and facilities to this commission. So the next steps are today, June 5th, the commission considers the adoption of the fiscal year 24-25 budget. June through August, we will continue to monitor revenue sales tax and property tax for the fiscal year 24. And in August, report to the Finance Committee actual revenue received through July. And in September, report the year-end actual revenues, revenue receipts and impact on fiscal year 24-25 that will be included in recommendations to address any potential fiscal impacts. Concludes my presentation.
We really appreciate your incredible work and the rest of the staff's work on this budget. Truly, not only was the workshop incredibly thorough, but then you've gone into detail about the changes subsequently. So we really appreciate that. And I do believe that even before you began, we got a motion to approve and a second. I will, but I just wanted to make sure that everybody knew that there's already been a first and a second to the draft motion that says, I move that the Sonoma County Library Commission adopt the staff recommended fiscal year 2024-25 budget in the amount of $52,096,951, including, is that right? One commit fund balance for capital projects in the total amount of $4,338,589. To add new 1.0 FTE for the community engagement division, and I believe that's 4, isn't it? No, I guess it is 3. Adopt the resolution for fiscal year 2024-25. Commissioner Goldberg was first and Commissioner Cahill was the second. Do we have any questions? Do we have any comments? Yeah, Commissioner Rainbow.
Just a comment, would help in the next budget cycle with because we have a great financial and budget committee. If we had a written report, what the budget, what their take on the annual budget was in terms of having a written recommendation from that committee about approving the budget rather than just what we got today. I'd like to see some discussion at the finance committee and some statements from them about things that they see as being positives things that we need to watch out for. Just in general, but otherwise, I mean, I think this is a good report. Questions?
Any other comments? Yes.
Thank you, Myrna. Quick question, just for my understanding. Under the changes since the budget workshop, there's an increase for county charges for processing vouchers and journals. Are those the services that support accounts payable that you mentioned? And can you explain that to me a little?
Sure. So the county provides various services for the library. In this case, they do we use their financial system, their we're called an ERP, to process all of our payments. And the number of vouchers, that's every voucher represents a receipt that for some service, some good that we purchased. And it's doubled over the last couple years, and so our costs have increased, charges by the number of vouchers that we process, that then they also process.
Thank you.
Any other comment? Commissioner McKenzie.
Just very briefly, again, the whole process that you put in place, Myrna, for the last number of years, it's been so tremendous and excellent and understandable, and through the workshop and then through the finance committee, and our chair has done a great job. And I appreciate his remarks to the point that this budget, but it's just day and night. And by the time we get here and we're ready to adopt, we've done all of the work that needs to be done. We understand what's going on. We've got documentation on everything, and just a fantastic job. Thank you, and all the team, everybody, our director, everyone who's involved in this. It's just excellent.
Very much of a collaborative effort, and the accounting team also prioritizes it and makes sure that sometimes they have to set other work aside to work on the budget, and it's definitely, I appreciate all their support.
Commissioner Engelbart, as the finance committee does go through the paperwork, we make suggestions and correction to the cover and go.
Right.
So that's already part of it. And I know that you watch the committee meetings, so there's a lot of discussion there.
Yeah, that's, I think a report just summarizing that, so that when doing the final budget, that we have, their recommendations in terms of saying, we've
Right,
looked
we
at the
wouldn't
budget,
approve it.
we've worked on it, and we approve it.
Thank you. All right, then, we're going to call the motion. Mr. Cahill.
Yes.
Mr. Elton.
Yes.
Mr. Engelbart.
Yes.
Mr. Bowler.
Yes.
Mr. Green.
Yes.
Mr. Cowder.
Yes.
Mr. Heatherich.
Yes.
Mr. Lagos.
Yes.
Mr. McKenzie.
Yes.
Mr. Millen.
Yes.
Unanimous. All right, the next one is the appropriate. The next one is the appropriations limit for the fiscal year 2024-2025, and this we do every time we do the budget, so that we don't go over the limits. Do I have to approve?
I think that we.
Okay, do I have a second? Any comments, any questions? Commissioner Cahill?
Yes.
Commissioner Elton?
Yes.
Yes.
Commissioner Butler?
Yes.
Yes. Mr. Hauser?
Yes.
Mr. Heatherich?
Yes.
Mr. Longman?
Yes.
Mr. McKenzie?
Yes.
Mr. Millen? Thank you, unanimous. All right, the budget adjustments.
We approve the budget adjustment.
Second.
Briefly, you could tell us about the commission adjustments or the budget adjustments. Yeah. Go ahead.
Good evening, Chair Doyle, Commissioners, Director Terrell. Sorry. I'm Catherine Lyon, the Accounting Manager, and I'll be talking about the Gifts and Donations Fund this week. The Sonoma County Library is requesting the budget for the expenditures to be increased by $121,000. The source of the funding is available funds in the Gift and Donation Fund. The gifts and donations approved budget fiscal year 23-24 for both revenue and expenditures was approved in the amount of $150,000. Through April 30th, 2024, actual donations revenue receipts were $131,863, and actual expenditures were a total of $147,881. Currently, we are assuming we are on track to receive the $150,000 revenue. Since the library continues to process fiscal year 24 expenditures through June 30th, 2024, the library needs to increase expenditures to cover the remaining expenditures in this fund. Again, the fund source is available funds from prior balance of July 1st, 2022. Expenditures under account 52115. Books, media subscriptions cover, for example, the books for the summer reading programs. Expenditures under account 52162, special departments expense cover, for example, community engagement programs such as the teen programs, yoga, and comic classes. Expenditures under 54404, construction and progress, building improvements are for study pod and shelving. This report was discussed at the Finance Committee on May 20th, 2024, and the Finance Committee recommended to advance this item.
Any questions? Mr. Elkins?
Yeah, I think you said, and I believe you're correct, that you're looking to amend the budget by increasing expenditures by 121,000.
Yes.
But it looks like there's a typo here.
Yes, I'm just getting to that.
Thank
There
you.
is an error in the motion, and the correct figure is an increase of 121,000 as discussed in this report, which reflects correctly in the resolution. This was a typo. Any other questions?
However, the resolution is correct. Thank you for noticing that, Ms. Cheryl Pint. Anything else? Now, remind me, since the Finance Committee recommended this, do we need a second?
Well, we need to. Somebody has a motion, yeah.
And I believe we have, yes.
We also need the motion amended, so moved and as amended to reflect the correct figure, 121,000.
All right, go ahead.
Maybe we have to, I think there's already a, sorry to be technical, I think we've already have a motion on the floor.
Yeah.
So we have to, we have to
I agree.
withdraw. Okay, so, do you want to move the amended motion?
Oh, yes.
Second? Second. All right. Any other questions, comments? All right, Mr. Cahill.
Yes.
Mr. Elkins.
Yes.
Mr. Rainbow.
Yes.
Culver.
Yes.
Reed. Yes. Hauser.
Yes.
Evanridge.
Yes.
Lagos.
Yes.
McKenzie.
Yes.
McMillan. Okay, thank you. Next is the architect. Thanks very much. We appreciate it. 9.4, the architectural services contract for the Rincon Valley Regional Library modernization project.
Good evening.
Talk to us a good thing.
Chair Doyle, Director Thibault. I'm bringing forward to you guys tonight. Authorization for the director to execute a professional services agreement with Siegel and Strain Architects related to the Rincon Valley Modernization Project. So the Rincon Valley Library was constructed in 1994. The building is owned and maintained by the city of Santa Rosa. The building has never undergone any kind of major renovation since its construction. It's been at least 30 years, not more. The
Project presents an opportunity to modernize the interior of the library and update the service model, create new technologies and programs that are essential to the Sonoma County Library. These are aligned with our facilities master plan, group provided by Group 4 Architect, library assessment and architectural facilities assessment, and our design guidelines by MK Finch, which was the people who were involved with this project at the beginning. So is outlined here on the motion. Do we have any questions?
Sure.
Hey, thanks very much. I'm excited about this project. I have a question though. I'm looking at the contract and on page 196, under paragraph 2, payment, says, in no event shall the total payable under this agreement exceed $350,000. That seems clear. Then on page 211, there's a payment terms chart, the top part of which shows a total of $350,000. But then there are 2 lines below where it says initial and target, and the amounts are $370,500 and $360,000. What are we looking at here? And why are those amounts higher than the not to exceed number?
Yeah. Well, these were provided to us by the actual architect, so that would be a question I'd have to ask them about. But the total amount of the contract is 350. But I'm not clear either.
That's a good catch. We may need to ask them to take those 2 lines out or have another explanation because the request.
Jeff, I cannot hear you.
Can you say that again?
Sorry. So I think we'll need to ask the architect to remove those 2 lines from their proposal.
To remove the 2 lines?
Yeah, because the ask for you is to authorize up to 350,000. So anything in excess of that would need to come back to the commission.
So can we do that as a motion saying the improvement subject to removing those 2 lines or explaining what they mean, that it isn't over 350?
Yes, I mean, if there's an explanation, right.
Well, wait. All right, there's one note. Commissioner McKenzie. Your question.
Yes, my question is, just to clarify.
Related?
Well, it's related to the topic. What do you think?
I'm talking about the lines that we're talking about having removed. Okay,
The question.
let's finish this conversation.
She has questions before we do that.
It might have an impact on these numbers. How about that? So my understanding has always been that the cities or the jurisdictions pay for the ADA improvements. So I just wanted to have my 2 ADA question was this involves ADA updates, the architectural fee. So I'm wondering if the city is going to pay its portion of that. And secondly, is the city committed to paying the ADA improvements in the plan?
For design service. So when we come down to the actual problem, funding the problem, we are having this year's budget that you just passed. That all part of the design, we responsible for the inside ADA. That's always been our take.
Okay.
And there's no exterior work in this plan so far, but we don't even have a plan yet, so.
So these ADA updates are internal and our responsibility. Great, thank you.
Remodel with an FF&E component.
With a what kind of component?
Benches and equipment.
Okay,
Any other questions?
thank you.
To Commissioner Hauser's point, if we're going to talk about approving subject to some changes, can we go back to page 211 for a second, please, Lisa? that top chart looks fine to me, but then there's an item about a survey, if not provided by the library, which is an additional cost, and estimated reimbursable expenses of $2,000, both of which would seem to bring the total cost above $350,000. So I'm unclear as to how the firm is proposing to provide all of the services that they're agreeing to, if they're also agreeing that in no event the charges are going to be over 350.
Madam Chair, I move that we postpone this item to the next meeting.
I just want to respond to Commissioner Elkin's question about reimbursable expenses. We are paying for design services. We are not paying for their travel. Reimbursable expenses are typically something that consultants do pass on as part of their work as consultants.
Chance for a second.
Does that mean that the total charge will exceed 350,000?
Well, this specific line, you know, that you're talking about the survey, if we don't do the survey, they're gonna charge us 5,000.
So the survey is something the library would.
The library, we do the surveys. You know, we did one for Cloverdale just a few months ago to get the roots of the patio. It's a typical ask for my staff.
So how can we modify the proposal to help you get what you want? And
As Mr. Hauser suggests.
What I suggested is about this move. I just moved that we approve this subject to a maximum of $350,000 to be paid, and any extra stuff is to be, they have to explain it, that it's not gonna be over 350, or they're going to, we have to rewrite the contract. Something like that.
Yeah, I agree with that. What about my motion to postpone?
no one seconded it.
Red
Jeff,
Cross.
do you wanna, does anything happen if we? What happens if we postpone this?
Well, we're supposed to start in October with planning, so it's not gonna delay that.
Right.
We can bring it back.
Yeah,
So
we
after
can't.
it's full.
I withdraw my motion.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't feel comfortable proceeding with a defective.
Thank you. Great. Like five. We don't need to vote on that. We don't need to vote on. That's right. We just. Yeah, we have a. Sorry. We're withdrawing the item. Until next week, until next, yeah, that's right. Okay. Is everybody, that accept me? All right.
Leaving it alone.
Okay, 9.5, authorize execution of agreements and purchasing amounts for the Petaluma modernization project.
I so moved.
Yes, it's been a long time coming. You're not going to steal your thunder, so talk to us.
Present to you this evening, authorization for director to vote agreements and authorized purchases not exceeding $350,000 for the Petaluma modernization project. Do you have any questions?
Questions? Well, do we have a first? Do we have a
Move
second?
to approve.
You, could you? Okay, sorry, we do have a second. So Commissioner Havenridge and Commissioner Greenberg, any questions, any public comments, any, all right. Then we're going to say Commissioner Cahill.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Yes. Great. Yes. Commissioner Hauser.
Yes.
Commissioner Havenridge.
Yes.
Commissioner Boggs. Yes. Commissioner McKenzie. Yes. Miller. I'll make it unanimous, all votes. Yay, Petaluma. Okay, we have done 9.6, 9.7, 9.8. Consideration of an ordinance extending the county-wide 1/8 of a 1 cent transaction and use sales tax to fund the Sonoma County Library System.
Yes, as I like to call it, the main event. So what you have before you is the ordinance as well as the resolution. The resolution is just included for informational purposes. We will be voting hopefully on the resolution at the July 10th meeting. As you heard from our survey consultant, Sonoma County voters support sales tax renewal, 80.1%. It's a good number. It's clear, as far as I'm concerned, it's a clear mandate to proceed. They also identified the things, the services and programs that we provide that they value the most. And those are the things that we included in the ballot language, in the resolution, and in our expenditure plan, which is part of the ordinance. You can also see what the timeline is for this process. Tonight is our first reading. We have a second reading and adoption of the ordinance at the July 10th commission meeting. We have a adoption of the resolution for ballot measure at the July 10th commission meeting, as well as the commission calling the election and ballot measure and the direction to staff to prepare the arguments. The last day for the impartial analysis and arguments to be submitted to the county registrar's office is August 16th. Rebuttals are due August 23rd, and then we have our general election scheduled for November 5th. Now, it's important that you understand that this is a new ordinance. It's a renewal of our sales tax, but it will be a new ordinance with a new letter. We are hoping for Measure K or Measure L, but we will get that assigned by the county registrar. And it all depends on when our paperwork is turned in. It's first come, first serve. We're hoping for Measure L. It is a 1/8% sales tax. The expenditure plan is as you see it. The language in the ballot is the same as our current ballot, with the exception of the amount of sales tax. So, in our survey, we projected $18.7 million. With our new changes in our sales tax revenues and fluctuations, we have adjusted that to 18 million. We both feel very comfortable that we can defend those projections. And so we did make that change to the ballot language. We also, this new measure will begin after the previous measure expires. So the current measure expires March 31st, 2027. The new measure will be effective April 1st, 2027. So there will be no overlap. You have completely two separate ordinances. So what I would like you to consider is what you have before you, the language in this document. It is, until ended by voters. And so we intentionally crafted it to be future thinking and forward looking, as well as, using that survey language and those things identified by our residents to help guide us in our decision making. And with that, I will answer any questions.
On the, I'm concerned about.
Could you put your microphone on? Thank you.
I keep forgetting. I'm concerned about how we could, either with the resolution or the ballot, it sounds like your advice, that wouldn't be a change in the ballot itself in some way or another.
Sorry,
Maybe-
Brett, could you speak more loudly, please?
Maybe even the guideline statement that the commission is used to shore up the accountability and the responsibility section to have the voters have something to show them that you're paying a future tax, but we're putting in an extra degree of accountability and efficiency and responsibility for oversight to make that stronger so that they're more inclined to say, yes, we're going to be paying a future tax on this. It's going to be lifetime tech, forever tax, that I've got the assurances of increased accountability to balance that out.
So in section 14 of Vernon, this is the language that talks about the accountability. It does include the Citizen Oversight Committee to annually review expenditures and appropriation and ensure that all revenues are spent or appropriated for the purposes and use set forth in the expenditure plan. This is what we currently do, and it is what we will continue to do. So there will be no change in the way we are held accountable for the expenditures.
Well, I'll write up something for the next meeting, just in terms of a proposal.
Any other comments?
We spent many hours last weekend on this. So.
We spent years on this.
So do we just direct?
We don't need a motion this month, do we? We need.
Because we do, so there is a.
Jeff, can you please speak louder?
Sorry. So there is a draft motion. You are introducing, reading the title of, and waiving further reading of the proposed ordinance, extending the transaction use tax to maintain and enhance library services.
Our vice chair would like to move.
I move that the Sonoma County Library Commission introduce, read the title of, and waive further reading of the proposed ordinance, extending the transaction and use tax to maintain and enhance library services.
Mr. Lagos, gotcha.
Yeah.
More comments? All right, we're gonna take the vote. Commissioner Cahill.
Yes.
Commissioner Elkin.
Yes.
Commissioner Enghorn.
Yes.
Commissioner Goldberg.
Yes.
Commissioner Green.
Yes.
Hauser.
Yes.
Commissioner Heavenridge. Commissioner Lagos. Commissioner McKenzie.
Enthusiastic, yes.
McMillan. And let me make it unanimous.
Chair Doyle, do you want to confirm there's no public comment?
Oh, golly, thank you so much. May we hear public comment? Well, I'm not sure. I think I hear lots of approving energy coming. Thank you, Jeff. All right. Let's see, we're down to discussion. Nomination for chair and vice chair. We'll be talking about it next month. So do we have nominations for chair, commission chair? Mr. Goldberg.
I'm gonna nominate you for another year.
Thank you. Other nominations?
Is to be seconded?
I think we do that next month. Yes.
Name people that would be.
That's good. Nominations for vice chair.
For chair.
He had to.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Correct.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Okay, so I'd like to nominate Barbara McKenzie for chair.
Okay. Any other nomination? Okay, do I have a nomination for vice chair?
Stick with somebody who's done a great job.
Any other nominations for vice chair? Okay, so those who were nominated and those who choose to nominate, Commissioner McKenzie, did you have your?
Yeah, I wondered about entering Commissioner Elkine's name as a nomination for chair.
I'm gonna decline, but thank
Okay.
you. Thank you. You could also enter my name into nomination for divorce court.
And may I ask a question?
Sure.
In the past, we've done this in the meeting, but other names have been allowed to be submitted in between the.
I was just about to say, anyone chooses to self-nominate or nominate someone else, please, please, please get the nominations into me and to Lisa. And we'll make room on the agenda for that, and we will, but make sure that you have a nomination statement or whatever as well. And let the person that you know, if you're nominating someone, let them know that they've been nominated and give them an opportunity either to accept or decline. And try to get it in. Lisa, what did you say the deadline was? The usual deadline for our commission materials. Let's see, agenda items for future commission meetings.
Well, I was just going to say, I thought a good idea could come up in public comment, and I think I'd like to offer it like for a discussion at the next meeting, having a lab commission committee to talk about the roles of the labs, improving communication and, you know, all that lab related stuff we talked about many times today.
Commissioner Ingos, you have your hand up?
Yeah, I have a couple of,
Could you speak up just because some of us are?
I have a couple
Thank you.
of proposals for the future meetings. One is the janitorial evaluation and report to get an evaluation of the janitorial services and the contract and whether we're going to renew it or not, just to get a report on that. I think also the idea of a book sanctuary, of establishing the library, Sonoma County Library is a book sanctuary. And I'm willing to write up written proposals on each of these. So
Can we have a second on talking about the janitorial? Or do you want to make a report, Erica? About
As far as I'm
janitorial thing?
concerned, this is an operational decision.
Yeah. Perhaps you could report on it during in your report at some point.
yeah, whatever, if you decide to do that.
And do I have a second? Is there someone else?
And so the book sanctuary, I'd like to have that on coming agenda to talk about the book sanctuary and having a proposal to declare the library as the book sanctuary.
Can you explain what a book sanctuary is?
That's a declaration. There's a review, there's a discussion about it in the American Libraries edition this month, but in more detail. But what it is to say that the library itself is a sanctuary for books. And that would mean that the issue of a book being banned or not banned, that would still be accepted. Our concept would be that we're a safe place for all books.
How about a resolution?
And that, yeah, I'll write up a
Perfect.
resolution for that, but
Perfect. So we're working on that in Washington as we go off next week too.
and then
Okay.
the third thing is just to bring back based on the public comments, the past requests to have a discussion and to act on the motion, which has been approved in the past to it as a future agenda item on readings. It's been put on the agenda for almost a year and a half now, and now it's come up from the lab, and I think it's time that we have that come up as a motion to discuss either the lab or the bylaws committee or here, so that we can talk about that in more depth and come up with proposals. And I've already submitted past proposals for
You
that.
there haven't been any seconds.
Oh, no, they've all been seconded. So I can cite each of the commission meetings where that's happened.
Why don't we have a conversation about this then? Anything else?
Adding to the agenda.
I'm adding it to an agenda. It may not be in July.
Just was going to second it if you.
We'll be on the agenda at some point.
Anything else?
Well, it's, as I said, it's been, and I'll, in what I write, I'll give the dates, the times it's been presented before, but it's been about a year and a half. No actions were taken on it.
Anything else? Gonna take that as a no. Okay, then, our next meeting is on July 10th. Here in Rohnert Park, and, with that, we are adjourned.
Janitorial's going out through our.